Hi there, I'm Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist and partner here at TCS, and I'm very excited that you're joining me today. Now, what we're sharing with you today is the virtual backstage conversation that I had with one of our guests. This guest is Mike Gower. He's Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for Rutgers University. Now, he had joined us to participate as a panelist in the event called Reimagining Higher Education, the New Age CFO. So before that recording started, we were able to have this great discussion, which we were able to record. I'm bringing it to you today. We talked about some fascinating topics here. We talked about student retention as an economic driver. We talked about how to help students reduce their debt load so they're not going to school for 5 and 6 years. They can graduate in 4 years. We're talking about everything from how to use artificial intelligence to actually help struggling students. We talked about the ability to share a class across multiple universities. So the best classes, the best content, best presentations were available across a consortium even of classes, or even within the various different campuses, instead of trying to have Economics 101 in every location through remote and digital technologies, and a lot more. So he was the panelist in an event, again, called Reimagining Higher Education, the New Age CFO. The link to that event is below here in the comment section. You can sign up and listen to all those answers, listen to all those keynotes and discussions. So please do that. And I hope you enjoy this conversation as well. Thank you for joining. So all universities lose a certain percentage of students between their freshman and senior years.
That's right.
Is that a potential revenue source? Can different things be done to increase the rate of retention so that that revenue can, increases to the university and you don't lose it?
Yes, all the time. I always say that the retention number is something that we control. Now, the decision is made by somebody else, by the individual, but we control how we interact with the student or the student's family and have the most influence in that retention. So yes, there are things that we need to do that look at advising, that look at students at risk, being able to identify them before it's too late and be able to intervene or at least communicate, advise, counsel. And this gets back to student mental health, really having a plan that looks at our population and says, how can we help you? We want you to stay here. Some proportion will always transfer for reasons that have nothing to do with us. And I also like to focus on not just the first to second year, but the second to third, third to fourth to graduate. So one of the things that is, I argue, most important in reducing student debt is helping students finish on time.
Yes.
If you look at the statistics that higher education tracks, it's a 6-year graduation rate.
Yeah. And
rarely do you look at the 4-year graduation rate.
Yeah.
And there are lots of reasons why that happens. There's a change. I started in engineering. That's not for me. I changed to healthcare, and I have to restart some things. But there's a lot of things, for instance, that we recognized we got in the way of students finishing on time. Part of it was the scheduling of classes.
Yeah.
So we had an intensive view of the scheduling of classes and the physical moves that people had to make around, in particular in our New Brunswick campus, to get from Class A to Class B.
Oh, yeah.
And within a period of time. We have one of the largest bus systems of any higher education institution, and that's not good. That means we have a lot of distance physically between different parts of our campus. And we can't change that, but we can change where the classes are being held and at what time they're being held. And so working on algorithms to make that work. This contributes to retention as well, because if the students continue to make good progress towards that degree, then they're going to feel better about what's going on. And if they can get it done in 4 years rather than 5 years, well, that's one less year of tuition.
Oh, absolutely. As a futurist and a guy that studies a lot of the, artificial intelligence and workflow processes and all this kind of fun stuff out there, it just seems like there should be effective ways of tracking students almost on a day-to-day and being able to have almost like an artificial intelligence buddy that's looking at their progress and any challenges they have or need for remedial work so they don't fall behind in a class, so they get extra content or extra, help at each step of the way and all kinds of things like that. Do you see that as playing, some kind of role in the future?
Oh, we already have things like that. They're not. They will get better. They will be more attentive, if you will, to the at-risk situations. But they're not bad now. At each our campus, we do have a special at-risk monitoring program in place that looks at different variables, different aspects, and tries to identify individuals that we may need to make contact with, but that can get better. And that has to be balanced off by privacy a bit. I mean, it certainly does. And that we are looking out for the best interests of the students, in particular in mental health issues and other kinds of things like that. But it is absolutely necessary because there are so many demands on these kids. The mental health impact of COVID, we won't even really understand for years. And need to be extremely attentive to it. But yes, I think that you're exactly right on. That's a absolutely important use of AI as a tool, not as a determinant, but as a tool.
Right. So you mentioned before the challenges with maintaining classes that weren't paying their expenses. Ones that are just inefficient classes, if you would. Do you see a role for sharing different specialized classes across multiple universities to reduce those costs in the future?
I do. I think there are a lot of opportunities for that. I was at a meeting yesterday where we were just talking about that. But even within our corporate university, we have a full campus in New Brunswick. That's our biggest one. We have a campus in Newark and a campus in Camden down by Philadelphia. Do we have opportunities to share, for instance, I always pick on Econ 101.
Yes.
As a class that hundreds of people take on each of the locations.
Right.
So do we have an opportunity using technology to have core lecture interactive types of classes that are shared across the three locations, then and include with that some preceptor work and in-person work in between those big lectures, like almost like the labs that you'd see in the science realm. So as to be able to leverage the best faculty the most efficiently while still having an interactive capability. And but then on the other hand, having some kind of a local personal touch. So as an extension between, say, Rutgers and Penn State, oh yes, there's a great opportunity there. But between Rutgers and Rutgers, there's even a bigger opportunity.
Very good.
And that's where I think that we can control destiny in that area. We're already using that to an extent in our medical schools and our law school, where they're at multiple sites, and we have very interactive video conferencing capability between those sites, so that the faculty member can be in one, but completely interactive with the other site.
Do you see, if you're looking at the power scale, that more and more of the power is slipping over to the consumer or the student themselves, where they have more options, more choices, things like that? Does that play into future considerations?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if we don't think of it in those terms, then we'll go down the path of newspapers. Absolutely. What is our selling point? That is the credential. It is the knowledge transfer. It is the critical thinking. It is all those elements. But at the ultimate, it's the credential. And we already see other players in the market starting to work on badging and certificates and micro-credentialing and all these kinds of things. So what is to preclude Google from bringing forward the equivalent of a degree in computer science? Now, we're already seeing higher education collaborating with some companies like that in creating those degrees. But what happens when the consumer or the extension of the consumer, which might be an employer, starts to find that those credentials are as acceptable as the BA or BS from Rutgers or another institution? Well, then it's a new game.
Yes.
We have a lot of competition that we're not necessarily watching. I think we are starting to really watch it. Some of us are watching it more than others. But it is absolutely going to be a trend. And if anything that's come out of COVID is the greater acceptance of remote learning. Not that it is necessarily preferred, but it may be the best way in some circumstances for someone to get what he or she needs. We have to be attentive to that. We have to be attentive to what is the value of our credential versus someone else's.
Yeah.
And if we don't, shame on us, because then we're going to have somebody eat our lunch. We don't even see them coming.
Wow.
But I see it coming. I absolutely see that coming. And there have been some attempts at it that have not necessarily worked, but progress through failure is how things really get moving. Just because MOOCs didn't necessarily become the thing didn't mean that hasn't set a path for a different use of it or a different thought around it. It absolutely could and would. And for that matter, we need to be thinking about those things.
Mike, I want to thank you so much for taking your time on this Friday morning to spend with us. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure.